Hello, my name is Dr. Wave Nunnally. I teach at Evangel University, and today I'm here with the Center for Holy Land Studies, for whom I regularly instruct in the land of Israel. In the coming months, I'll be answering some of your toughest Bible questions in a new question and answer series that we're using to dive deeper into the Bible. Our question for today is, how does the Nativity story, the birth of Jesus, play out in cultural, historical, geographical, and spiritual contexts? This is a great question because for too many Christians, the very basis of our faith, that God became flesh and dwelt among us, that God took on a human form, is at the very foundation of other important things like the final and perfect sacrifice of Jesus on the cross, dying a true death and experiencing a real resuscitation or resurrection from the dead. So this question goes to the very heart of Christianity, and that is the incarnation. I would like to suggest that rather than allowing that most important event in human history to be wrapped in the mists of legend and myth, that we allow the realities on the ground within the land of the Bible to firmly root this historical event in the reality of human history. In order to do that, we've got to go back and look at the birth narratives in the Gospels of Matthew and Luke. There we find that the parents of Jesus are chosen for very specific reasons and from a very specific ethnic group. They are both ethnic Jews. The birth of Jesus then becomes a fulfillment of promises and prophecy to the Jewish people in the world of the Old Testament narratives and prophecies. We find parents of Jesus who, as we discussed in an earlier answer to an earlier question, that Jesus' parents were observant Jews. They observed the Scriptures, they obeyed the Scriptures, they were ethnically and culturally observant Jews, and they raised Jesus in that kind of a context. Jesus is also born with a degree of irregularity that would accompany having a human parent for a mother and a divine parent for a father. There were questions. There was a certain amount of ostracizing, a certain amount of rejection that went on, both of Jesus' parents as well as Jesus himself. Jesus, not having a naturally occurring earthly father, would be looked at in Hebrew as a mamzer, as one who was born out of wedlock. For that reason, there's a certain amount of cultural stigma that would be attached to him his entire life. It was raised the question was raised toward the end of his life about his parentage by the religious leadership in Jerusalem. One example of how this would affect Jesus in his earthly life is that being in the status of mamzer, he would not be allowed to marry. So we do indeed see a Jesus who, contrary to the Jesus Seminar and a lot of the more liberal groups and individuals who love to go to these Gospels outside the New Testament and reconstruct Jesus as having had an earthly wife like Mary Magdalene and had children and the like. That's one of the themes of the Da Vinci Code, the book and the movie. We instead see that Jesus remains unmarried the entire course of his earthly life, exactly in the status of mamzer that we hear about in the literature of the early rabbis. We hear about in these early stories of the birth of Jesus that when Joseph and Mary were in Bethlehem, that they experienced already, even before the birth of Jesus takes place, they're experiencing rejection. And rejection, not in the sense of an innkeeper who had too many people already was overbooked, wasn't able to get them into a room. But Luke specifically says in his gospel that there was no room, not in the inn, I-N-N, or motel or hotel, but rather that there was no room in the guest room. That's exactly what the Greek of the New Testament says, meaning that Jesus' family, his parents, were not allowed to stay in the main part of the home because the main part of the home was already housing other members of their extended family. So this follows along the theme of rejection by men all the way to the end of Jesus' earthly life in the crucifixion. It starts even before he's born. It continues after his birth. So this has to be then factored into our understanding of the birth narratives of Jesus, that there's this theme of rejection even before his actual physical birth. After his birth, we hear in the Gospel of Matthew that Jesus is in danger, and that Herod the Great, the Roman puppet king of his day, in control of the land of Israel, wanted to kill him. We hear in the Gospel of Matthew that Joseph, his father, is sensitive to the guiding of God and is responsive to an angelic revelation that Herod wanted to kill Jesus, and he escapes he and his parents escape to the land of Egypt and live for a period of time. It's fascinating that we hear in the earliest stratum or level of rabbinic literature, we hear this same story, that Jesus was in Egypt. He learned certain spells that could accomplish miracles like healing, and he brought that knowledge of healing back to the land of Israel with him at some point, perfectly corroborating the story in the Gospel of Matthew of a flight by the Holy Family to the land of Egypt, a period of sojourn in Egypt, and then a return to the land of Israel with an eventual ministry that includes, yes, healing. Absolutely fascinating when you are able to study these texts that are at the very core of who we are as followers of Jesus, as Christians today, to study the early days of the life, the physical human life of Jesus, and to watch how that fits in together with things that we are now able to know, whether it's from the study of the Greek language, from being in the land of Israel and studying its culture, its history, its archaeology, its geography, and from looking at these sources that are immediately contiguous with the land, the world of the New Testament, and Jesus' ministry, and to wed those things together. We do these kinds of studies on a regular basis in the land of Israel, and we want to invite you to come and study in context with us as we do so. If you want to read more about Jesus, his early life, his birth, his parentage, feel free to take a look at an article that I recently published called Christmas and the Importance of Family. You'll find that at holylandsstudies.org and at penews.org. Well, that's it for today, but you can send your toughest Bible questions or anything that you've been wondering about to the email listed on the bottom of this screen. We'll be choosing some of these to be answered in the coming months. In addition, if you have a desire to grow in your understanding of the Word of God in its original cultural, historical, geographical, and spiritual contexts, the Center for Holy Land Studies offers a variety of study tours throughout the year, including a more in-depth study program in Israel that's designed for anyone wanting a deeper study experience. You can find all these tours on the Center for Holy Land Studies website at holylandsstudies.org, and we'll see you next time.